we heard about subjective, objective realities. We heard about, I don't know, so many new concepts, so many new constructs. And it's post lunch, everyone experienced some, I don't know if it was the real food or it was just my memory telling me that what I ate was something called food, or was it, you know, it's, I mean, am I living a dream or is this all real? And I'm in the matrix. I feel like I'm Neo, or am I Morpheus, or who am I? And and we are entering an age of Web 3, so that's going to be a whole new reality in front of us, which is going to be virtual, augmented, extended, and we are talking about longevity of life and, I mean, what is this reality? Is this, what we are experiencing, is it real world, or is it a world that's been made up in my own mind, or is it, for and so I would let Deepak, continue the conversations about the nature of this reality that we collectively are experiencing, or whatever, or is it insanity, or what it is. I'll let Deepak continue, and welcome back, Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, since Sureel started with reality, and whether this is an illusion, it doesn't matter. If you're in the middle of an illusion and you're part of the illusion, then it's real for you till you wake up. Yeah. Like you had a dream last night, this morning it's a dream. Last night it was real. So everything is real if you're immersed in it. But going back to how people have thought about this through the ages, it's not like, I have to say that there's no country in the world that has thought more about this than India. And it's fair to acknowledge that. India has contributed more to systems of thought, including science. And right now it is doing that again, Silicon Valley, etc. So India has contributed more to systems of thought and also to philosophy, but also one thing is very interesting, that India has never colonized another country through weapons or military, but India is a colonial empire. What's happening right now is India is colonizing the world, but not through weapons, through culture. And that's very interesting, including the political scene, the science scene, the entertainment world. This is a good time for India if we can just harness the collective creativity. And so when people say, what is stress? It's the worst use of imagination, and the best use of imagination is creativity. If we can send people to the moon and we can have interstellar space exploration, certainly we can remove poverty and bring about social, economic, racial justice and reverse climate change. All the technologies are already there. And so it doesn't matter if it's illusion or reality, we can upgrade the illusion. Even if it's an illusion, let's upgrade it. Systems of thought, usually, including in India, philosophical systems of thought essentially are three. One is called matter-only monism. There's only the physical world. That matter-only monism right now is in trouble because, first of all, we do not experience a substance called matter. You do not experience, even though this is very physical to look at, touch at, experience, what we are experiencing is our perception. Furthermore, it's a species-specific perception. We give it a name, matter. So matter-only monism is in trouble because it does not explain how do atoms, molecules, force fields, gravity produce thought or imagination or inspiration or insight or intuition or intention or anything that we call human experience. How do atoms and molecules produce that? And the answer is they don't. Even atoms and molecules are perceptions of human beings, names given to perceptions by human beings in consciousness. So matter-only monism is out. Then the second way human beings have thought about reality is mind and matter. Mind and matter are two different things. That philosophy in Europe, or in India, by the way, all these philosophies have existed. If you look at the literature, everything has existed. Atheism, agnosticism, religious ideas, God, deities, goddesses, all these ideas have existed, but some of the deeper ideas have also existed. So dualism, matter only, etc., have all existed in India since ancient times. Mind and matter as a conversation in academia came about much later in Europe. It is what we call the European Enlightenment, and that's recent. It's only 400 years or so. And the person who's given credit to this dualistic philosophy is René Descartes from France, and the famous expression was, "I think, therefore I am." Obviously, he's wrong. Okay, you don't think, therefore you am. You are, therefore you think. So right there's a huge problem with Descartes. But dualism also doesn't hold. If matter and mind are two different things, how do you raise your arm? It starts with a thought, and now this is very material. How do you speak? How do you do anything? So if matter and mind are two different things, then how does one interact with the other? That philosophy now violates the laws of thermodynamics, conservation of matter. There is no agent involved in turning mind into matter, or we don't even know how that happens. Without going into details, mind and matter as two different entities is not an acceptable theory in philosophy or science. So it's out. Matter only is also out. So that leaves only one, consciousness only. And can consciousness explain mind? Yes, mind is an activity or modified form of matter. Can it explain emotions? Yes, emotions are a modified form of consciousness. Can it explain what we call the physical world? Yes, because what we call the physical world is a perceptual experience in consciousness modified by consciousness. So that is what really holds true. In India, that has been around for a long time. Yoga Vasishtha, so many, Abhinava Gupta, all the great sages of the Upanishads, Buddha, Jain, all these people had very clear ideas, expressed differently, but definitely experientially. And then, of course, not to use a pun, how does it matter? How does it matter that there's no matter? It does, because all our fears, everything from old age, infirmity, death, what happens after life, is there a God, does God exist? If we are one planet amongst trillions of planets and trillions of stars, all of that, how does it give any significance to you and me? Is there any significance to you and me? And that depends on how you define what you and me means. If you and me means a physical body and a mind, it doesn't matter. This is a very provisional, ever-changing landscape. It's part of the scenery. It's not what we call the seer. And then who or what is the seer? You can't see the seer because it's doing the seeing. Just like your eyes can't see themselves except in a mirror, and your teeth can't bite themselves, you can't see yourself. So you have to actually see yourself in the form of a reflection. And what's the reflection? This. This is the reflection. This whole thing that we have created. You say, we have created buildings, we have created this beautiful auditorium. Have we created the Milky Way galaxy? Have we created the entire universe? And I say, yes, we have. We interpret our sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts as the universe, as the body. But that's all we have. All we have is sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. So I'm going to try and cover this quite quickly, because then I want to, there's a point coming here. One of the points is, can we take some of these ideas and actually create something out of it? Otherwise, it's just ideas. No, you like ideas, but ideas have to manifest in order to upgrade the illusion. So I want to introduce two ideas that today have come forth. One is, as a result of Milan and me talking about politics, I think we can actually create a leadership program. However we do it, it'll be non-profit, so it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to make money out of it, but it will actually have an impact. We have the statistics. The second, which have become very involved in it, at some point I'd like you to come on the stage and speak for 5 minutes, is something that we are very passionate about. It's suicide prevention and mental illness. Every 40 seconds, somebody in the world is dying of suicide. It's become the second most common cause of death in teens. Imagine, this is a failure of our humanity, that our children are killing themselves. It's insane, absolutely. And we can reverse it. That's another movement that we have created through using AI and technology. And it's been very successful. So we want to bring it everywhere, especially through the Middle East, because Middle East has a footprint everywhere, in Europe, in India, and now in most of the world, because they're doing so well economically, but they're doing well otherwise too. So leadership, and the third area is longevity, because now chronic disease is optional. You say, well, if I live 50 years, or 100 years, or 75 years, or 150 years, does it really matter? And the answer, it doesn't. On the cosmic scale, it's just a blip in time. Whether the dream is 5 minutes or 100 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's still a dream. But as long as you're dreaming and you enjoy it, do you have a choice? Can you extend lifespan? The answer is yes. Okay, with all that we are learning about both how we consume time, how this is a very interesting concept that actually comes from Vedanta. What's his Yoga Vishishta says, time is the consumer and we are its food. We are time's food. So how do you consume time? Are you running out of time? Do you have all the time in the world? Have you transcended time? There are so many ways of actually understanding the experience of time. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But what I'd like to do now is immediately go. Let's have the slides, please. I'll try and do this a little faster than I took this morning. I was just shooting the breeze for a while. But I'll do this a little faster so we can actually grasp this a little bit. But then I want to, if your game still will finish on time, I want to do a meditation that might give you a little experience. Let's have the slides, or just let me have access to the technology. I don't think there's... Slide shuru kar de? Okay. Okay, so now, let me go behind. Go a little further behind. Piche kare. Okay, ugly slide. Ugly slide. Yeah, bas. Okay, so direct experience. Let's talk about direct experience, what that means. Let's say you have no human constructs. You were born and you're 1 or 2 years of age. You don't even have a name at the moment, and you're experiencing the world. what would you experience? What would be your experience of reality if you had no human mental conception of anything? It would be only four things: sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Direct experience is just that. By sensation, I also mean sound. Sound is a sensation, color, form, shape, taste, smell. That's all experience, okay? So by that, I mean these are sensations, images. Images are images, imagination. We all have imagination. Feelings, emotions, and thoughts. That's all we experience. After that, it's a story. It's a human story. So direct experience is sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. As soon as we give meaning to direct experience, and we don't actually give meaning, we are taught how to give a meaning. You are shown, your name is Deepak Chopra, you are a Hindu, you were born in India, this is your family tree, this is your father's profession, and this, by the way, is a clicker, and this is a hand. But you don't know that. All you are experiencing is sensations, sounds, images, a little bit of feeling. You have a relationship with your mother, okay, or as a baby you have feeling. All mammals have feelings, and then we have thoughts. And they're all entangled, they're all the same. As soon as I say, think of your mother, well, you see an image. Image, if you feel an emotion, you have a thought, you have a sensation. So they're entangled, and therefore they are vrittis, they are fluctuations of consciousness. Once you give meaning to it, you generate a perception. So perception is not direct experience. Direct experience is just this, S-I-F-T, sift. Perception is, oh, that is Kabir. Oh, this is an auditorium, etc., etc. You know, when I was in medical school, by the way, not long ago, in Delhi, in All India Institute of Medical Science, there was a Nobel Prize that was given to two scientists who developed actually an experiment to show that perception is learned experience, So you take a group of kittens and you put them in a room that has only horizontal stripes, then these kittens will grow up to see only a horizontal world. If you take another group of kittens and you bring them up in a room that has vertical stripes, then those kittens will grow up to see only a vertical world. Is the world vertical or horizontal? For these kittens, it is. And when you look at their brains, the neural connections reinforce the experience they had as kittens. So every experience you're having right now was programmed into your consciousness the moment you got a name, the moment you were said, okay, this is Deepak, this is Milind, now we begin perception. This is a tree, this is a river, this is a cloud, this is this. All there was sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, and you were part of that whole thing. But now you have separated. You say, there's me and there's the universe. Subject-object split has started, which Krishnamurti was famous for saying, the observer is the observed. Nobody got it. Okay, but people are getting it now, long time after he died. So direct experience of color, you can see this, I've already said this, so I won't repeat it. But what applies to one sensation applies to every sensation. So all perception is learned culturally, economically, religiously, ancestors, very complicated, starting with when humans started telling stories. That's what meaning is. It's a story. You give a story, now you create a perception, and then the story recycles through eons of time, and we call it reality. So giving meaning, the storyline created by emotions. Emotions is I like the sensation, I don't like the sensation. Now actually, if you really look at sensations, you'll see that sensations of pleasure and pain are exactly the same sensation. That's why we have some people have what they call their what's the word I'm searching for? masochism, sadomasochism. They enjoy it. Why? Because they get pleasure out of pain. Why? Because it's the same sensation. If you take a VR and you put person in extreme cold and extreme hot, they can't tell the difference. Okay, so actually that has immense implications even medically. It's a story, therefore pain is a story and pleasure is also a story. And of course it all comes through relationship, because it's through relationship that we entangle emotions and stories. We exchange storylines. This storyline exchange is called karma. Karma simply means past experience, how we interpreted it, and now we are stuck by it. Okay, you're stuck because it's a prison, but you don't know it's a prison because you don't know the difference between what you were learned to perceive and what was the reality. So that's why karma is called a prison. And you know, bondage, karmic bondage. And freedom is actually knowing that you as consciousness are actually independent of the story. The story is a provisional story, even though you created it or your culture created it or your religion created it, but that is not who you are. You know, you are, the awareness of an experience is independent of the experience. The awareness of pain is independent of pain. The awareness of pleasure is independent of pleasure. The awareness of any story is independent of the story. So mind, body, and world are human constructs. People say, how do you define an illusion? Illusion means it disappears after a while. Okay, it's not there all the time. It's ephemeral, it's ungraspable, it's transient, it's impermanent. That's, or it's a dream, or it's a projection, whatever you call it. Projection is not a bad word, by the way. And illusions are mistaken for reality because we are embedded in them. All perceptions are magical lies. Magical lies, people don't understand the word Maya, so magical lie is a better. Magical lie means this earth appears flat, but that's a lie. This ground appears to be stationary, but it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. So I experience this as stationary. It's a magical lie. This is a magical lie because it seems to be solid, but it's proportionately as void as intergalactic space. If you could see my body as it really is, you'd see a huge emptiness with a few scattered dots and spots and some random electrical discharges. And even those scattered dots and spots are forms of emptiness. They're modified forms of emptiness. And this is not philosophy anymore, by the way. This is today's technology. You can't send email if you believe in the material world. You can't send a text message. You can't go on Twitter or Instagram or see a movie if you believe in a material world. Because what we are seeing is the appearance of zeros and ones as that. You, Mr. Deora, are a digital 3D printout in a non-local consciousness. And even that 3D digital printout is changing, just like a movie. We have digital movies now, so what's the big deal? Okay, everything is digital. Ugly side, kare? Okay, now just this little bit, just why are we this freedom to create everyday reality consciously is a means to alleviate suffering. Freedom from fear of death. You say, what is death? Death is happening this moment. As soon as you have a thought, it dies. As soon as you have a perception, it dies. As soon as you have an image in consciousness, it dies. Why does it seem continuous? Because of the story. The image without the story is a flashing on and on. That's all it is. And the freedom of death can only occur if you know yourself as that which is fluctuating the image. You're not the image. You're not the fluctuation that is the image. You're the source of the image. And that source is not in time. So this is what human beings want. This is the basis of religion, this is the basis of philosophy, this is the basis of everything. what happens to me after I die? Well, you just died. This morning is dead. 5 minutes ago is dead. These words are dead by the time you hear them. So actually, death makes life possible. Without death, there's no life. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. Birth is the opposite of death, and life is the continuum of birth and death. Life is the movie. Birth and death are opposites. Life is the continuum of birth and death. I must have said something else. Okay, and then the third thing that happens spontaneously, not an imposed morality, not the 10 Commandments, not this is sin and this is virtue, but an emergence. You can't help it. This is natural when you remove the illusion of the conditioned mind. It's the conditioned mind that creates the subject-object split. So that happens spontaneously. Truth, beauty, compassion, joy, bliss, insight, creativity, loss of the fear of death is a result, not a means. Okay, now I've talked about quantum entanglement, and I'll just very briefly mention it. This year's Nobel Prize went to quantum entanglement, okay? And it was due, but this conversation been happening since 1935. And I won't go into the history. If you're really interested, there's a book called The History of Entanglement, and it's about how Einstein came up with the mathematical formula which says everything in the universe is instantly connected to everything in the universe. Instantly. It was called the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen equation, but then Einstein himself withdrew from his own theory, said it's a blunder. He signed the paper because 2 of his students had actually come up with the theory, but actually it was the right theory. And now, you know, almost 100 years later or 75 years later, the Nobel Prize goes to this one understanding that everything in the universe is instantly connected to everything in the universe. There is an expression in physics, when an electron vibrates, the universe shakes. Okay. But so is qualia entanglement. Qualia entanglement means we have agreement on our experiences, or we try. This is a good movie. That's a good leader. That's a bad leader. This, that, the other. We are entangled in our stories, in the meaning we give to our stories, and that ultimately is the metabolism of this body, because this is a concept. This is called the conceptual body, or you say the karmic body. If I ask you to close your eyes right now, we won't do it. We can do a meditation later. But if you close your eyes and do nothing, you'll become aware that you're having a conversation. Who's having the conversation? You are having a conversation. With whom? With yourself. Okay? And the conversation, by the way, is only about the past and the future. It can't be otherwise. The past conversation that you're hearing in your head right now, when you close your eyes, that past conversation is a past story that you gave meaning to. And if the story in your mind was pleasurable, then you feel pleasurable sensations in your body. If the story was unpleasant or painful, then you feel painful sensations in your body. So, pleasure and pain are the interpretation of past stories. And interpretation of past stories is what we call karma. Karma means I did something consciously or unconsciously. It created a series of events that are interpreted thus, thus, thus. Pleasure, pain, joy, sorrow, birth, death, up, down, hot, cold, whatever. And now this physical body is the projection of that. So it's called the pain and pleasure body, the karmic body, the conceptual body, the vritti body, doesn't matter. But this body is not a physical thing. It's an interpretation, and the recycling, simple word, easy to use, especially in India, now become a meme globally, karma. Karma recycles as the body. And that is the metabolism of experience. Now, what I said visually applies to all other senses, so we don't have to go. Just take the visual, and it's the same thing with auditory. So right now, I'm making noise. But because you understand English, it has meaning. Otherwise, it's noise. Okay? Same thing with anything else. You like Chinese food, I like Italian food. It's a learned perception. It's just sweet, sour, salt, bitter, pungent, astringent. That's what it is. But after that, it's a story. Chinese food or this. So let's say, let's take only a few visual examples. How many of you can see a woman standing in or sitting in front of a mirror, etc.? You can? How many people can see a skull? So which is it? It's neither. It's a color. It's a shape. Your story says that's a woman. That's. How many people can see two faces? How many people can see a goblet? It's neither. It's a story. You created that story. Where does it exist? In consciousness. What's out there? Nothing. Out there is a vritti that you interpret as out there. And that vritti is a color, in this case, a shape. A man or a woman's face. Now, if you're careful enough, you'll see a mother-in-law, father-in-law, and daughter-in-law. How many people can see a man? How many people can see an old woman? These are some beautiful illustrations. So here's a man riding a horse. There's another person on the street. But then you look around and you say, oh, that's an old man with a beard. Butterflies and flowers, woman's face. These are constructs in human awareness for vrittis. Birds coming to their nest, a tree, and birds or a woman's face. Horses against a background, a mountain, sky, or a woman with long locks. Look at this, a nude or a man with a beard. I love this more because this is inspired by a poem from William Blake, who was one of the greatest visionary poets of all time. And in one of his poems, he says, we are led to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye that was born in a night to perish in a night while the soul slept in beams of light. It's the perfect example of waking up. He says, we are led to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye. With the eye, we see what? The projections of the conditioned mind. Through the eye, we see reality. That's called waking up. You see dragons, you see a face, nothing that you see actually is there. It's shapes and colors given meaning. Look very carefully, the face that appears is not in the picture. Carefully look at that. The face that you see is not in the picture. This is how you create the whole universe. Okay, so what is reality? This is reality. Yatha pinde tatha brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is your body, human body, so is the cosmic body. As is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind. And that's the matrix. This is the most accurate picture of reality that you can imagine. And one phrase, yatha pinde tatha brahmande. Atman is Brahman. Okay. Jeev Atman is Brahman. When you wake up, not before you wake up. And then all this makes sense. Those 7 chakras are basically junction points between consciousness and projections of reality. That's what they are, the 7 chakras. Abraham Maslow, who created a huge movement, transpersonal psychology, he spoke about 5 levels of whatever, 5 levels of need. But most people don't know that when Abraham Maslow died, they found in his library notes on the 7 chakras. Okay, so he was basically, he even didn't get to the 7 chakras, but that's where his inspiration came from. When Joseph Campbell wrote the whole mysteries of mythology, the history of mythology, that's where he got it from the Upanishads. Okay, so this is very fundamental, primordial insight to sages and seers and rishis that came as a result of the transcendent, going beyond the, the conditioned mind. So here is the key. Your body and the physical universe are both projections of one consciousness. That one consciousness is called Brahman, and then everything else is called Brahmand. Okay, so what is consciousness? It appears like this. This is Brahmand, and in its formless state, it's Brahman. And everything that we call the universe or multiple universe are projections of that one consciousness, and because that one consciousness is infinite, borderless, fundamental, irreducible, it can project infinite universes. Infinite. Even that's also in the Vasishtha. So what is, go back. What is, slide. What are the steps? So this word meta-human, I just made it up, but then I realized it's been used by others. Abraham Maslow was writing about meta-human, etc. Meta means beyond, and human means beyond the human conditioned mind. So when we wake up, then there are certain steps that you can follow to wake up, or some people wake up without the steps. It doesn't matter. First is non-reactivity. Krishnamurti said the highest intelligence is the ability to observe yourself without judging yourself. Brilliant statement. Because when you observe yourself without judging yourself, then you observe everything without judging everything. And that's called being the witness. You are the witness, Sakshi. The witness of the mind, the witness of the ego, the witness of the intellect, the witness of the body, the witness of energy, the witness of the world. So this is one thing that you can do any time. Before you react to anything, you stop. Stop, pause before reacting, take a few deep breaths, observe your mind getting quiet, and then proceed with awareness. Don't be a biological robot. Today's society actually helps us to become biological robots. We are all biological robots till we recognize that we are biological robots. Develop spiritual values like kindness, compassion, gratitude, joy, bliss, equanimity, non-acceptance of your, non-judgment of others in yourself, interoception. This is a new word in English, but it comes from the word original. It's inspired, the 8 limbs of yoga. So one is called pratyahara. So pratyahara is you withdraw from the senses and you go inside your body. We all practiced pratyahara when we were babies. We learned to toilet train and control our bladder and bowel. That's pratyahara. You are told, you hold on to it. But then we stop. Pratyahara means how do you control your digestion? How do you control your cardiovascular system? How do you control your blood pressure? How do you control your heart rate variability? How do you control your breathing? How do you control your immune function? On and on and on. And that can only happen if you have access to pure consciousness. So I remember when I first met Maharishiji, and he was my guru, and he said, ये metabolism है कितना कम होता है meditation से. So I said our studies show 25% you can decrease your metabolism. And Maharishi said, bas 25%. I said, what do you mean? He said, वो तो zero होना चाहिए, zero. I said, zero तुम्हारी सी death है. He said, नहीं, samadhi hai. You know, and we argued about this. We obviously were looking at reality two different ways. He said, if you are meditating properly, meditation, आपका metabolism zero होना चाहिए. मुझे समझ नहीं आया, you know, till we actually explored this. And there we can do it. You can decrease your metabolism almost zero in samadhi. And that is when Patanjali goes right in the last 3 steps. Patanjali's knowledge is so clear. He starts with yama and niyama, which is emotional and social intelligence, because we live in this world. The yamas and niyamas are the basics of everything we call emotional and social. Then he goes directly into the body, yogas. Why? Because the body is the best mirror of what's happening in your mind. So when you do the asana, whatever it is, warrior 1, warrior 2, happy baby, child pose, you're actually introducing a state of awareness. And if you stay in that asana, you will control your musculoskeletal system. If you understand the asana, you will control your musculoskeletal system. So Patanjali starts with social, emotional intelligence, controlling your musculoskeletal system, and then the 4th step he jumps to pranayama. He says, use breath, control everything. Hundreds of pranayama techniques. Now we teach maybe a few, but you know, you can use your breath to increase your metabolism, you can use your breath to decrease your metabolism, you can use your breath to change your heart rate variability. We have time, I'll show you some of these things, but with breath you can do everything in your body, because breath is prana, and prana connects consciousness to biology. So then Patanjali says, start yama, niyama, yogasana, pranayam, and then pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawal of the senses and going inside the body, interoceptive awareness, tuning into the wisdom of the body. You should be able to control every function in your body. Heart rate, blood pressure, immune function, whatever. Okay, so then pratyahara is advance of pranayam and yogasana. Then he goes, and I'm deviating from this, last 3 steps, he goes dharana, dhyan, samadhi. In that sequence. Okay, so dharana is focused awareness, dhyan is the meditation process, and samadhi is subject-object become one. Fundamental reality. And that's the key. That is the key, the dharana dhyan. And then you see the 2nd chapter, and if you've read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the 2nd chapter is totally devoted to what we call vibhuti, or siddhis, or what we might call non-local dormant potentials. Okay, so once you acquire that, you can see the future, you can see the moment of your death, you can remember the past, you can see past lives, you can connect remotely with people, you can heal remotely with people, clairvoyance, clairaudience, non-local sensory perception, extrasensory perception, everything that the modern world now has kind of corrupted, psychic, this, that, the other. It makes no sense till you have the fundamental nature. You know, people are going to psychics, they're going to astrologers, etc., etc. But once you understand the basis of that, you should be asking, how can I do that? Okay, if this person can hear in a distance or see in a distance or have memory of other lifetimes or project into the future, know everything, how can that happen? Well, if reality is non-local, outside space-time, then everything is entangled. That's year's Nobel Prize. Everything is entangled. Electron vibrates, the universe shakes. And so going to that fundamental reality, you not only control your body, but you control the elements and forces of the universe. All that is symbolized, by the way, in our symbolic representation in India in one figure, Ganesh. So, if you look at that symbolism in Ganesh, he has the largest ears, listens deeply, big head, introspective, going within, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, ashes, beyond the three gunas, big stomach, give me your problems, I'll digest it, snake, ego, 1 foot transcendent, 1 foot in the heavens, absolute and relative. And then what else? Everything that he holds in his hands has a meaning. So actually that is a state of consciousness. And Ganesh is the symbolic representation of state of consciousness. Says, if you have that state, you'll remove obstacles. And who will be with you? Siddhi and Riddhi, the two goddesses. Siddhi is extra sensory perception, supernormal powers are these days again. What's your superpower? I mean, it's all returning from the matrix, right? So what's your superpower? Or Riddhi is even control of the elements and forces of the universe, because the elements and forces of the universe there and here are the same. So that is introception, transcendence, and metacognition. Metacognition being aware of yourself having an experience, aware of yourself making a choice. This is all there is. If you know the 8 limbs of yoga, and if you know these principles, you should be able to create your own movie, including the movie that you call your physical body. What is the evidence? Is there evidence? Next slide, please. So now let's come to where we are going, waking up to meta-reality, that is awareness prior to conditioning. What is it? It's a field of infinite possibilities. It's without form, it's fundamental, it's unpredictable. This is another thing. We all seek predictability, but if you had predictability all the time, there's no creativity. Creativity is based on unpredictability. Perfectly logical system has no creativity. You can simulate, Computers can make good paintings, but they're still inspired by they're created by human beings. So creativity and unpredictability go together. And then you realize that this is the source of intention and intention. It is also the source of what we call synchronicity. Everything is connected to everything else. So when you talk to people, successful people, leaders, I've interviewed them all, everybody at the end says, they say, I did hard work, I did this, that, the other, I went to law school. But then they say, I was lucky. Or they say, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or they say there were many synchronicities. If they are religious, they say God was on my side. Or they say it was a state of grace. It's the same thing. It's actually entanglement. It's synchronicity. And that is what people call good luck. So it's free of its modifications. It unfolds through synchronicity. It is self-organizing, self-regulating, self-evolving, and deeply rooted in the sense, I am. So this is what happens. When people wake up, this is what happens. And now we have actually studies. I just mentioned you a few studies. We did, in 2012, we did a 1-week retreat. At that time, we were calling it Seduction of Spirit. And we took 2 groups of people, one that were having a nice holiday in Hawaii, and the other that were actually in this retreat experience. At the end of the week, we measured gene activity, and we measured the level of telomerase, which is the enzyme that controls how long we age. All the genes that are responsible for health and well-being went up 17-fold over baseline. 17-fold over. All the genes that were responsible for or implicated in Alzheimer's, in cancer, in heart disease, they went down. The level of the enzyme telomerase, which controls how long we live, went up by 40%. Now, I knew that if this study came from Deepak Chopra, oh, there he goes again, quantum this, quantum that, quantum mysticism. So I said, I'll remove myself from the authorship. I'll get people from Harvard, from UCSF, from UCLA, from UC San Diego, Scripps, Duke University, just basically the 10 top universities. I said, can you do this research for us? When people wake up, what happens to their biology? They said, you'll never get funded. NIH is not going to fund you. So I said, I'll collect the funds. And I went and collected the funds. And I gave every university a job, do this, do this, do this. And I said, in the paper, don't mention my name, just publish it. Say it was done at whatever, Chopra retreat, but otherwise don't publish my name. We had a Nobel Prize winner in that study, Elizabeth Blackburn. She had no idea, by the way, what we're doing. All she's an expert in looking at genes and telomerase. She won the Nobel Prize. Even with her on the paper and these stellar universities, we could not get the paper published for 3 years. Finally, it was published in Nature, and then everybody started replicating it. Now we know that meditation doesn't matter, vipassana, reflection, what transcendence, meditation changes your gene expression. It changes how your cells behave. It restores homeostasis. It brings about healing, and it extends lifespan. And all you have to do is be diligent in that. Once the paper was published in Nature, which is a very huge accomplishment for our team, then people started replicating it. Now we are doing psychological studies, and they're being published. So all these studies are being published. This is what happens. People have a shift in the sense of self. I'm not the body and the mind. I'm the observer of the body and mind. A change in emotions. They feel more love, more compassion, more joy, more peace. A change in cognition. The mind gets quieter and more creative. A shift in memory. I use memories. This comes from the Shiva Sutras. I use memories. I do not allow memories to use me. So allowing memories to use me is karmic bondage. Using memories, creativity. So all this is there. Insight, intuition, vision, creativity, flow, transcendence, loss of personal agency. I'm not doing anything, it's happening. And loss of fear of death. So this is the milestones, and what this leads to. एक slide पीछे करो, इसके बाद पीछे जाएं, इसके पीछे, इसके पीछे, नहीं आगे चलें. Next, next. पीछे जाएं. I saw the slide. और जाएं पीछे. और जाएं पीछे. और जाएं पीछे. Yeah. Okay. So now what deeply understanding consciousness allows us to say what has been said before, that reality is different in different states of consciousness. The brain is different in different states of consciousness. Your biology is different in different states of consciousness. Your perception is different in different states of consciousness. So, these are the states of consciousness as described in the literature, you might say, of non-dual Advait. Okay? Credit you can give to all the rishis, but if you have to give credit to one, give it to Adi Shankara, because he reformed the whole thing. Okay? So this is Adi Shankara's map of states of consciousness. The first state of consciousness is called waking. I hope you're in it. Okay. Okay. The waking state of consciousness, which is the lucid dream in the vivid now. This is the dream. This is the most basic state of consciousness is this. Okay. But this is also a waking dream, because it's, this is what we are engaging in now is a dream. It'll be over at 4:30, I think, okay, or whatever. So, yeah. So this is the first state of consciousness. It's called Jagrit Chetna, okay. Second state of consciousness, which you had last night, is called Swapna Chetna. This morning, that's a dream, okay. When you wake up, this will be a dream, but last night's dream is second state. This is more intelligent than this. Why is the dream state more intelligent? Because it's more ambiguous, because it's more contradictory, because it has more paradox, because it's more ephemeral, because therefore it's more creative. This is fixed. Okay, so this is not creative at all. Its expression is creative, but it comes from the more creative state, the dream state. Okay. So that's called swapna, swapna chetna. The third state of consciousness, which is more intelligent, is deep sleep, which is called sushupti. So when we are in deep sleep, we are non-local. There is no subject-object split, and there are now, it's still a state of awareness. How do we know that? Well, you say, I had a good sleep. I feel so joyful. It was a joyful sleep, right? Because it was non-local, there was no subject-object split. Now, if you wake up, then this, so Jagrit Chetna, Swapna, Sushupti, soul conscious, called Turiya. What is Turiya? Turiya is you have a glimpse of the observer. Okay, you can do it anytime. So just now, as you're looking at me, be aware of who's looking. You're looking at me, be aware of who's looking, or what is looking. Everybody. And if you feel a presence, that's your soul. That's I. That was there when I was a baby, different body, different mind, everything different. But that was same. Okay. So being aware of awareness is soul consciousness. To be aware of awareness is soul consciousness. It's called Turiya. Now here are other ways to access Turiya. So one is to be aware of being aware. The second is be aware of the space between you and me. So as soon as you become aware of the space between you and me, mind quietens. Try it right now. As you're looking at me, be aware of the space. This space is borderless. It's infinite. But why had the Rishi said something deeper? This space is imbued with consciousness. It's called Chit Akash, the infinite space. But they also said Chit Akash is everywhere there is Akash, between breath, between movement, between thought, between emotions, between every vritti is Chit Akash. So it's in the space between space-time events. A thought is a space-time event, an emotion is a space-time event, a perception is a space-time event, but in between is you. And that's not a space-time event, that's Chitakash. So you wake up to that, you have soul consciousness. When that soul consciousness gets permanently established, so now that was Turiya, it's called Turiya Tata. Turiya Tata means my body is asleep, my mind is asleep, the whole world is asleep, but my awareness is fully awake. I can see the body, I can see the mind, I can see the world from a place that is outside of space and time. So that's called cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness, because I'm no longer in this world. I am in this world, but I'm not belong to this world. Okay, that's a Christian phrase. I am, Jesus Christ uses that phrase. I'm in the world, but not of it. Okay? It's to be local and non-local at the same time. Now, when this happens, because now you're non-local at all time, waking, sleeping, and dreaming, then you have access to the siddhis. Okay, but then thought creates synchronicity, or I have the same thought, I can read your thoughts, or I can, because I'm non-local, I don't identify with the body and mind. And this is when the fear of death goes away completely, because you have the experience, I'm not the body and the mind. They're changing vrittis. So extrasensory perception, so-called psychic powers, healing, past lives, future lives, all that, very clear in cosmic consciousness, experientially, not intellectually. Intellectually, to koi bhi kar sakta. You know, you do it intellectually, give it to others, become a guru. Okay, simple. But you have to have the experience. If you have the experience, then you don't need to convince anyone. You know what it is. You know, you don't have to convince anyone what gravity is or what electricity is. So you don't have to convince anyone about this. So that's called Turiya Tattva. This is also extrasensory perception and everything that we call psychic. And then that leads to, this is called Turiya Tattva. The next stage is called Bhagavad Chetna, which means God consciousness or divine consciousness. You not only experience consciousness here, you experience it in every object, every person, every sentient being. Ramakrishna, perfect example. You know, I don't know if you know the story of Ramakrishna when he was worshipping to the goddess, because he was a bhakta yogi, like the Hare Krishna people. And one day he was actually worshipping the goddess, mother, divine mother, and then he suddenly saw her on the floor. He saw her on the walls. He saw her in the ceiling. He saw her in the curtains. And he didn't know what to do. It's pretty bizarre. And then, as a result of not knowing what to do, he started to dance. And then he danced till he was exhausted. And after that, he was in divine consciousness. Vivekananda was his student, you know, but Ramakrishna was the source. This is the realm of miracles. Now we say, do miracles happen? Do people suddenly get cured of cancer? Do they resurrect from the dead, etc.? Historically, you'll find instances of all of the above. All of the above. But the one institution that keeps a track record of miracles is the Catholic Church. In fact, you cannot get to be a saint unless there's a documented miracle. So I was curious about this. And I said, you know, I want to see those documents. So synchronistically speaking, because I'm in this area and because the new Pope, Pope Francis, is relatively not conservative, he's liberal, he has to deal with politics in the Vatican. So I was invited to be on the science board of the Vatican. So, tell you a little short story first. I was late, Vatican, my flight was delayed, etc., etc. Everybody else was there, all the science. They have some of the best scientists on their board. And so I arrived at the Vatican, the Pope's residence, and not this Pope, the old Pope's residence. This Pope lives very simply. The old Pope lived in a castle. So they were having the conference in the chalet, and you could see through the glass windows that all these people were talking about something. Then one priest kind of rushed out, and he almost knocked me down, you know. And he said, "You're Deepak?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Can we take a selfie?" I said, "I'm coming to meet the Pope and you're telling me take a selfie." Later I found out that he was second to the Pope. So not only did I say take selfie, he says, "Can you talk to my mother? She's a fan." So he puts her on the phone in Argentina. Now I realize the politics of the Vatican. All the Pope and his gang are all Latinos, and all the other people are anti-Pope in the Vatican itself. There's a lot of politics. Okay, so that was insight. But then after the whole thing finished, I have written 3 books on the life of Jesus. and they're apocryphal. Nobody in the standard Catholic Church will not, should be burnt. So one is called Jesus, a story of enlightenment. One is called the third Jesus, and the last book was God, a story of revelation, in which, again, Jesus figures. So what happened is, he said to me, the Pope said, you can do a meditation tomorrow morning in the Sistine Chapel. I said, I'll do it. Have you told all your priests? He said, yes. But remember, the Europeans will boycott it. I said, fine. So all the Latinos came, all the Europeans boycotted it, especially the East Europeans. But we did a meditation. Then I asked the selfie guy, I said, can I give my 3 books on Jesus to the Pope? And he said, yeah. I said, but they're not, what St. Paul's version of the New Testament. He said, give them anyway. They're very relaxed people. So I gave them, and then the Pope said, give them to all the priests. So I was shocked. This Pope is very liberal. He's trying his very best against a very antagonistic system in the party itself. It's literally, you have conservatives, you have liberals, you have all kinds of things. And it's not an easy, it's a political organization, and it's a nation, it's a country. Where was I? So I was told you can go and see the secret vaults as a privilege. So they assigned a Princeton University graduate student on art history to take me through the Vatican to the secret vaults. So first you see amazing things, okay? You see Christopher Columbus writing to the Pope, I have discovered a new continent. You see Abraham Lincoln writing to the Pope, tell the Southerners that slavery is immoral. And then you see a letter from Galileo saying to the Pope, the earth goes round the sun, not the other way around. And Pope's response, you are under house arrest. Okay. But then I saw this letter, which I think you'll find very amusing, how humans operate. It's the letter from the Pope to Michelangelo, will you paint the Sistine Chapel? And Michelangelo responds and says, I could paint it, but you cannot afford me. And the Pope says, I can afford you. So Michelangelo said, what are you going to pay me? This is all there in the documents, of course in Latin. Somebody has to translate. So the Pope says, I will absolve you of all your past sins, all your present sins, and of your future sins. Now, of course, at that time, and even recently, homosexuality is illegal in the Catholic Church. In fact, at that time, you could get beheaded. So for Michelangelo, that was savior. So he says, I'll accept only on one condition. So Pope says, what's the condition? He says, Raphael has to paint the courtyard. Only I can paint the chapel. And the Pope agreed. And that was the birth of the Sistine Chapel. Human frailties, even at that level. But then finally you get to see the miracles. And these are documented miracles. Mostly happens on the 31st of December on New Year's Eve, when the Pope appears in the window. The Pope's a human being with the robes and all, but these millions of people have intense faith in him. And he does just this. And number of people walk away healed. Paralyzed people walk. Some people with cancer don't have cancer. What is happening? So then I called my colleague, I've written 3 books with him, Rudy Tanzi, who's the head of genetics at Harvard, at Mass General. I said, Rudy, we should study the science of miracles. And it's epigenetics. We now know what happens. Okay, consciousness goes back to its original state of self-regulation. The conditioned mind is totally discarded because the Pope is speaking about God, and the genes change their expression. That's the mechanism. So when we did our studies, there was one person from Mount Sinai, Dr. Eric Schott. He did all the genomics, he's showing the genomics. So somebody in the audience said, Dr. Schott, do you meditate? He said, no. says, are you planning to meditate? He said, no. He said, you just showed us the data, cancer, heart disease, this. Yeah, he said, now I know the mechanism, I'll make a drug out of it. And he left, actually, Mount Sinai, and he's now with the drug company, Pfizer. They're making drugs based on the pathways of meditation. And I've seen some of those drugs. These drugs are now soon going to be called longevity molecules. Okay, and we are actually exploring that in our foundation. There are 4 or 5 longevity molecules: quercetin, fisetin, NMNA, nicotinamide nucleotide, and those are the 3 main longevity molecules. And you can buy them on Amazon. There's, you just go on Amazon, you buy them, and they work. They change the metabolic pathways. They reproduce to some extent what meditation does. And they also cause DNA self-repair, and they cause self-regulation of metabolism. In addition, now there are 2 pharmaceutical drugs that are not available. One is metformin, which is used for diabetes. That's a signal molecule. And the other is something called rapamycin, which used to be used for transplant patients, but also does. So out of this research, now new drugs are coming. And AI is coming, and all these things are coming. So I'm going to stop here. And what I'd like to do at this moment, if it's okay with you, I want to ask Gabriella Wright to come and say a few words about mental depression, suicide prevention, what we are doing, and our global campaign for what we call Never Alone, for mental and physical well-being. As I said, physical well-being. And if there is interest here in India, we will work with anyone to actually create this campaign and bring you the technology, which is based on AI. Can you say a few words?
Yes.
She is co-founder of Chopra Foundation, and she is the co-founder of Never Alone. She works with the Chopra Foundation, and her other day job is she's an actor. Okay.
But aren't we all actors? Didn't we just understand that? Because we're all waking up
Yes.
to who we truly are, and that is beyond our identity, our conditioned mind, and our suffering. And there's a lot of universal suffering. There's existential suffering. And I doubt that anyone in this room has been spared of mental distress. And I'm sure, maybe it's embarrassing to raise your hand, but I'm the first one here. Why do I do what I do? Why do I do what I do? And it started because of mental distress, trauma. I actually lost my sister to suicide 4.5 years ago. And that's still very, very, very raw. And the truth is, we miss her physical existence. We miss her presence of being. But through the grief, there is a path to love. And that path to love is what we're attempting. And when I say attempting, because we're co-creating this together with you all, with everyone. It's a global movement. How can we experience on how to be never alone? How can we experience the reality of the non-separate self? So that's why I'm here today. It's an honor to work with Dr. Deepak Chopra, because not only are we talking about mental health, we're talking about a consciousness-based approach on mental health. And that's something that actually hasn't been done before. Now, Deepak has been talking about the incredible saints and the sages of the past that have been on this land, that are born of this land. But that's in the spiritual realm. And that hasn't been able to transcend, I would say, in the Western world for mental well-being. And there's a lack of that bridge. That bridge actually doesn't exist. It might exist in our individual experience, our journey to self, but it doesn't exist as a collective, as a sangha yet. And that's why every 40 seconds someone dies by suicide. That's why I lost my little sister, despite of the wonderful family that we have, it's still alive, the family's there, but it's a sinking ship, It's a Titanic. You lose one member, everyone just slowly decays, because that existential suffering and the not knowing of the why is a burden, and we all experience that. So our goal at the foundation is to create a movement for freedom from suffering on the path to joy. And we're very practical. We're using technology to reach a critical mass. The foundation's overall vision is to reach 1 billion people for a critical mass, global transformation, a more joyful, sustainable, healthier world. For Never Alone, the mental health, we believe that mental health is health. You know, it is the basis of how we communicate and how we co-create the world together. I don't need to give you a lecture. Deepak just did it. So the point is, how can we reach this critical mass? We have an AI emotional chatbot named Peewee. Peewee happened to be the nickname of my little sister, but it is also an acronym of people interacting with intention. And people interacting with intention with an AI that is fueled and programmed with mental hygiene tools, resiliency tools, that you also have access to suicide prevention hotlines and therapists that can come in at any time. It's available 24/7. Right now it is deployed in English. We have 24 million text message exchanged on our platform. At the beginning, when we started, we only thought we would be engaging 20,000 people. Now we're at 24 million. And so it shows the need. There has been a study that young people prefer to communicate with AI because they feel less stigmatized. Less judgment is in the room. They don't feel that they're misunderstood because there's nothing to understand. They just want to exist in that communion, that simple communion of presence. So that's one thing. We also have a program called Freedom from Suffering. Freedom from Suffering is our consciousness-based approach to mental health, mental well-being. There's several modules to that. Our path one is Peace is the Way. Of course, it's based on Deepak's work, but we also have incredible, world-renowned mental health experts that are joining the Sangha. So it's an alliance. It's a co-alliance with incredible organizations, technology, consciousness-based approach. And we're also embracing the different territories because, as Deepak explained, we have a conditioned reality. And it depends on our religion, our background, our cultural backdrop, the painting of who we are. And so we're also engaging in those different conversations. How can we destigmatize mental health so that we can openly talk about it? And I actually had a wonderful conversation with Milind before I landed. And we spoke for about an hour engaging in how can we destigmatize things? If we're creating a global movement, we have to look at all of the stratas of society. Political, how do we engage in that conversation from that political aspect? How do we engage in that from a community aspect? How do we become responsible for one another? Not because I am responsible, but how do we create that love in action, that care, that true care that actually matters and can change and save someone's life when you're in a moment, when you're alone. So that's our global idea. The idea is being co-created, and it's very exciting. We want to bring this to India. A lot of our content to help destigmatize, we've engaged with artists. My sister was a singer-songwriter, and one would expect, because of the art form, that there's a catharsis that happens when you share your art, you share your burden with the world. But actually, sometimes you're the most lonely person on the stage. And so we're working with artists. In America, we've worked with quite a few younger demographics, the urban demographic, rappers and so. And it was lovely to see Deepak actually having these incredible conversations around spirituality, but mental health, engaged in mental hygiene, and finish with a little meditation. And all of a sudden you have an 18-year-old rapper who goes, oh my God, Deepak's super cool. Like, I like that guy, you know. So that's the bridge, you see. And there's one thing that we have to all walk away with, is that if we can become love in action, if we learn how to bring our attention to someone in our life, how do we learn to appreciate that person? What is it? How can I turn that appreciation into a simple form of affection? And then how can I accept them for who they are and not try to change them? And that is one bridge that can save someone's life. So we're here to serve. We need your help. And it's a beautiful journey. And thanks to you, I'm healing, because this is in the light of my sister's presence. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to check it out, the website is www.neveralone.love. www.neveralone.love. And we are creating these global sanghas, and maybe if anyone's interested in following this, and we're doing it in English, Arabic, Hindi, Urdu, the goal is to do it in Farsi and all the other languages. This could become a significant movement here. And as I said, it's all non-profit. So if anyone wants to engage, maybe they can talk to Gabriel. Huh? Huh? Oh, trying to bring up the website. Okay. So again, it's simple, neveralone.love. Global Sanghas, attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. That's the principles. People support each other, and as you can see, lives are being changed. So if anyone's interested, they can connect with Gabriela. Can they connect with you? Yeah, okay. Thank you.